like that. So, hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucero Vazquez, and I'm just going to be starting on this presentation, short presentation I have on gentle nutrition and intuitive movement. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Lucero Vazquez. Pronouns are she, her. I'm an anti-diet exercise physiologist, and I have the big three if anyone's interested in knowing. And my education, my background is in exercise physiology. I do have my bachelor's in HPEX with the concentration of exercise physiology from VCU. And I'm a certified exercise physiologist through the American College of Sports Medicine. My professional experience has been working in medical fitness and cardiac rehab for VCU, as well as working in cardiovascular disease risk reduction education and community programs. I do want to kind of throw out a little disclaimer that I am not a registered dietitian. I am not a medical doctor, and any information provided today should not be taken as medical advice. Please consult your provider, your medical team for any clearance or advice prior to modifying your diet or fitness regimen. My main goal for today is to introduce different concepts, different topics that I never encountered as an exercise physiology student, but concepts that totally shaped the way I interacted with my patients, as well as how I interacted with my family members, my community, as well as with myself. So I hope everyone finds something that they haven't heard before, something new, or if you have any questions, I definitely want this to be very laid back and relaxed. So any things that you want to bring up during the presentation, I'll try to give space for that as well. Okay. Okay, so first I want to get into talking about the fitness and wellness industry, which is what I went into straight out of college and what I thought was the best thing in the world. And the longer I worked in it, the more I learned about it, the more disappointed I was. I quickly realized that the fitness and wellness industry is an industry that is so much money pushing it, and it's an industry that pushes and promotes self-accountability, and it promotes discipline and concepts that really rely on the factors of fat phobia and systemic oppression. Fat phobia and systemic oppression both are things that heavily push the fitness and wellness industry, and are both things that allow the fitness industry as well as the medical industry to victim blame patients for their circumstances and make people feel inadequate. And as we know, anything that is problematic when it comes to medical care or treatment disproportionately affects Black and Brown communities. And just going into it a little bit, those of you who are in the medical field might know a little bit more what fat phobia is. For those who haven't heard that term before, fat phobia refers to not just the body positivity movement, but it actually refers to real systemic oppression of those who do live in larger bodies, those who are fat, those who do feel that they are being blamed for their health because of their weight or because of how society or their medical providers perceive them. We also see systemic oppression tying into both of those. So systemic oppression, fat phobia, a lot of it you're going to see intertwined. And they're both things that are rooted in white supremacy, which could be a whole other conversation. I'm not well versed in that, but I do understand enough to see how it harms our communities. And this is just a little excerpt that I grabbed from Daughtry, CJ, Bad Faith and Victim Blaming, the Limits of Health Promotion. And this quote says, "To blame patients' poor health on their behavior is to blame people already victimized by their circumstances." Being that I am from a Mexican community from Southern Virginia that has a traditionally low income, I constantly saw that, and still today see it with my patients, where poor people are blamed for being poor, and people with health conditions are blamed for having those health conditions. So you can kind of see where everything starts to tie in, where we're not seeing beneficial health practices when it comes to nutrition and exercise. And the fitness industry is trying to push in and say, I can help you. I can change your circumstances, and give a really disheartening and disillusion of what the purpose and value nutrition and exercise hold. So one thing that I learned working with patients, and just a background, the majority of my patients throughout the time that I have been working as an exercise physiologist have been Black and brown patients. That has been the majority of the population that I've worked with. And one thing that I came across is how a healthy diet was perceived by many people, by my peers, by my patients, by my family. And you might have some of these thoughts too. So if you could just think to yourself, or even if you want to put it in the chat or say it out loud, what are some of your first thoughts when you think of a healthy diet, or things that you think other patients or other people think of when they hear a healthy diet? So one of the things that I notice consistently with patients is that when they think of a healthy diet, the first thing they think is that the purpose of it is for weight loss. Another thing that I noticed is that when they think of healthy, they think it's tasteless, that it has no flavor. Another thing is, the first thing that comes up is accessibility. How much does it cost? Where can I find these foods? What are these foods? How do I cook these foods? A lot of things that people really don't include in their day-to-day cultural lifestyle. So even though I still from time to time use the word healthy, I had to kind of change how I approached that, how I introduced that topic to my patients, because even my family, coming from a Mexican background, you do have this concept of a healthy diet where, oh, we're eating too many portions. Oh, we can't eat both beans and rice at the same time. Different misconceptions that really go into it. And one of the biggest reasons why we think it's flavorless is because our cultures aren't represented in the resources in the medical profession. Most of the demographics of registered dietitians are predominantly white, non-Hispanic American. So it's really hard to see your culture in that food, and it's hard to automatically assume that your food is something that is beneficial to you. And so the best thing I was able to do is learn more about what a balanced diet was and how patients approached a balanced diet and what they thought of when they heard balanced diet as opposed to a healthy diet. So like I said, things my patients heard when I said healthy diet was weight loss or inaccessible or flavorless. And they also, and in turn started to see food as good food versus bad food, which can be really dangerous, right? Because you start adding the component of morality to food. And it's really important to know that there is no such thing as good food, no such thing as bad food. There's no, these foods don't have any kind of morality. And what can also cause things to be harmful to patients is hearing good food versus bad food. So many times I heard patients come in on their follow-up saying, oh, I was bad this weekend. Oh, I haven't been so good. So they started tying their personal view of themselves, they started tying it to the foods they ate. So, it's like, no, you ate a piece of cake, you're not bad. You just ate a piece of cake. That's what it is. So it's really hard to kind of tie that away. So I started using with my patients the term of balanced. I started using balanced diet, and it's something that I learned through other clinicians that were working with patients as well, and trying to emphasize that there is no food restriction, and trying to emphasize that it's not centered around weight and that it should be sustainable. One of the phrases we used is the best diet is the diet you can stick to. So trying to get away from the concept of a balanced diet is something temporary, because we don't want that. We want something that is sustainable. And if it's centered around weight, it cannot be sustainable. So that's what we kind of pushed. And although a balanced diet, just changing the terminology, can't change things like the accessibility, it can't change food deserts, it can't change income, it can't change these things. But by emphasizing that there's no food restriction, a lot of patients started seeing more options for themselves, because now you're not restricting carbs, you're not restricting beans and rice on the same plate, you're not restricting tortillas. So you start opening up your options, and now patients that might not have been able to eat a balanced diet because they didn't think that food was appropriate for them to eat are now able to mix and match foods to what is accessible to them. Patients thinking that canned food is bad because they heard that somewhere or they saw that somewhere, that canned food is bad, they're going to avoid that food, when canned green beans is totally better than no green beans. So having them realize that, and having them understand that what is important is that you feel full, that you are eating, that you are having energy to get through your day. Because a lot of our patients that are low income, that are from our Black and Brown communities, a lot of times are working 2-3 jobs. A lot of my family members have high physical, laborious jobs that require a higher amount of calories. So when you're restricting yourself, you're really creating a recipe for passing out, basically. So that's one thing that I had to really talk patients through, that it's not something that's a fad. It's not something that is for the purpose of losing weight. And that was really what it came down to. A lot of people came to me for the purpose of losing weight. And I had to explain, that's not what I do. That's not why we're here. So we definitely worked on behaviors, and we worked on, behaviors that were helpful to them. And I tried to explain weight loss is not a behavior, right? Weight loss is weight loss is not a treatment. And a lot of times weight fluctuations can be a result of different habits, different behaviors. But I'm not focusing on weight as an exercise physiologist. I'm focusing on your physical limitations and your physical abilities. And I'm also focusing on making sure that you feel like you are able to eat things. And this is one of the best things that I learned from one of the registered dietitians that I worked in. We worked with a lot of diabetic patients, and this was specifically for our diabetic patients that didn't really know how they could balance their meals and also didn't really think they could eat the food that they were accustomed to eating. And when you Google diets or diabetes recipes or diabetic friendly recipes, a lot of the foods don't look as good as these plates. So it was really beneficial for me to see this and beneficial for my patients to see that. I remember patients looking at the Mexican food plate and immediately going, "What do you mean I can eat tortilla and beans?" Because so many times they've had a professional, unfortunately, tell them they can't combine two carbs. And so many times it's really unfortunate. We have patients go into different medical scenarios, and all they hear is that they have to lose weight and just eat less and move more. And really, I don't think providers have come to the conclusion as to how harmful that can be. So I'm really thankful for being introduced to these. These were actually developed by the Institute of Family Health. And I hate to break it to anyone, but you're supposed to enjoy what you eat, right? One of the things that I definitely push is no restriction unless it's medically necessary. But when it comes to just living your life, there is no need for restriction. And restriction can actually lead to a lot more negative behaviors or negative results. So that is one thing that we really try to emphasize. And yes, yes, Tiana, note that beans and rice are complete protein. So different things, adding, okay, yeah, we can share the slideshow, right, Tiana? Sorry, I'm trying to read the comments at the same time and I'm not good at that. Okay, so now, okay, I don't know how to go back, but I'm sorry, I don't know how to go back. Wait, don't look.
You can stop sharing for a second if you want. But that works too.
Okay, nobody look. Okay, so shifting a little bit away from nutrition, there's so much we could still talk about nutrition. There's so many conversations that could go on about it. We could really dive into accessibility. We could have a whole presentation on food deserts. And I definitely want to continue this conversation once the presentation is over, because that is my favorite part, is hearing everyone's thoughts, hearing what they've learned so that I can learn more. And I do want to shift a little bit more into exercise, since that is really my field. That is really my strong suit. Before leaving the nutrition side, I do want to note that a lot of my concepts and understanding is really more based around gentle nutrition, I would say, just because even though it does take some similar concepts from intuitive eating, which is probably something everyone has heard of by now, I do want to note I am not trained in teaching about intuitive eating. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't really go into it, but I will provide a little bit of resources at the end if you want to learn more about that. But now shifting over to the exercise part, I do want to start off the question, and maybe we can add a little bit of conversation if you want. Just going on, what did you learn about exercise? And that includes elementary school all the way to college. Does anyone want to chime in? Okay. If you don't feel sore or pain after you work out, it wasn't effective. Yeah, definitely heard that before.
I feel like a lot of what I was taught about exercise was like as a woman or like as women in femmes, like we weren't supposed to lift weights because that would make us look like masculine and bulky. And like
Oh
learning in
yeah.
college that wasn't true. So like it was always like informed for me, like, oh, like stick to cardio, like you want to be like slender and just like always striving for thinness. Like thinness was the goal with exercise, never
Yeah.
like I just want to look good in my clothes or like, anything else.
Yeah, Alicia also mentioned exercises for weight loss. That's what we're taught. Exercise should be 5 to 7 days a week is the things that we've heard. There's a lot of things that we've heard that I learned as well that I didn't realize until after I left the academia space, until I started working with patients and really understanding more, that I realized a lot of it doesn't make sense all the time. A lot of it is not always applicable. And a lot of it sometimes feels theoretical in a way. And a lot of the things we learn are just plain wrong. So there's things like we can start with if you don't feel sore or pain after you work out, it wasn't effective. We've all heard the phrase of no pain, no gain, which I have heard patients in cardiac rehab say, which was really concerning because one of the things we rely on as exercise physiologists in cardiac rehab is for you to stop when you feel pain. That is something that we rely on so that you don't further hurt yourself or, we don't end up doing CPR. So that is one of the things that can be super harmful to teach anyone that pain is a sign of an effective workout. That is totally not true. And also understanding that tension in the muscles is different than feeling pain, right? And you're not always going to feel sore after a workout, and that's okay. Many of us probably wouldn't continue working out if we felt sore after every workout. So that is a great point that we've all learned. Exercises for weight loss, tying it back to the first slide, how fat phobia at the end of the day hurts everyone, whether you're fat or not. So focusing on exercise as weight loss really discourages people that are fat from enjoying exercise. Someone asked, what does soreness signify? I remember in middle school being taught that soreness was a result of lactic acid. And then in college, they really hammered it in that it's not something that is solely related to lactic acid, but it's more so related to minuscule tears in muscle fibers that are allowing the muscle to tear and repair, and that's how it's getting stronger or growing with hypertrophy. So that is one of the things that is definitely, that's another thing with exercise, a great example of how exercise science is constantly changing, constantly evolving, because it is a fairly new field. So we're constantly learning more and more throughout the years. So I do remember in middle school, our teacher teaching it was lactic acid related. But anyway, sorry. So going back to exercises for weight loss, that is something that can really deter people that are fat from enjoying exercise because maybe you don't want to lose weight. Maybe you don't want to lose weight, right? So why go to that? And also, it puts this added pressure that this is the reason you're going. And it also can create feelings of shame or guilt if you don't do exercise, because you're already being blamed for your medical condition because they're relating it to your weight. And now you're feeling bad because you're not doing what they are telling you is supposed to solve all the problems related to your health, because it's going to make you lose weight. So it's just a really never-ending cycle. And Also, for people that aren't fat, people that are very thin, they might feel like exercise is not beneficial for them because they have no need to lose weight, which is another misconception. And another part of exercising 5 to 7 days a week, which is not always the case. Some people like to exercise 3 times a week. Some people like to exercise 7 days a week. And whatever you enjoy is really what's going to be the best thing for you. Um, One of the reasons why I mentioned that things aren't always applicable, I remember one of my very first patients that had a very physical construction job. ACSM, I learned 150 minutes a week of exercise. So that's what I'm going to tell him. You have to do 150 minutes a week of exercise. Well, I'm so tired after work. And then me not knowing what to do because no one told me what to say when a patient has a really physically demanding job. And when you don't take that into consideration, you almost discount that. You don't realize that that's also physical activity. You don't realize that that's also giving those benefits of physical activity. And also taking into consideration what kind of exercise is there, what if you don't have a gym? What if you don't have access to that gym? So really trying to help patients with all of these factors that weren't really emphasized in school was a big challenge for me. But once I started understanding that exercise is not clear cut and physical activity is not clear and cut on what needs to happen, I started to understand a little bit more of how to help my patients in a different way. And I also started taking out the concept of weight loss when explaining exercise and physical activity to my patients. I just stopped mentioning weight. I stopped weighing my patients before and after. Of course, there were certain situations where I did notate weight if the patient had heart failure and we needed to measure water weight. Certain situations where that's what I'm looking at, that's what I'm looking at. But when it came to different goals and different patients, I avoided weigh-ins because it's not something that I needed to do my part in their health journey. So I really emphasized the different benefits of physical activity, and we'll also touch on the difference between exercise and physical activity. But benefits of physical activity that I really emphasized was the increase of strength, which can help in your physical activities. And that's kind of how I taught the difference, that exercise is something that you can plan on doing. And the benefits of exercise can also help during your physical activity and daily activities. So it can also reduce the risk of injury by improving your balance, increasing your joint strength, your muscle strength, and improving your posture. It can also manage chronic conditions. Exercise can help with reducing blood pressure. It can help with managing any kind of metabolic disease. It can help with improving your mood, which is one of the things I didn't really realize. I knew everyone said, oh, it makes you happy. Oh, the endorphins. But I thought I had to run miles for this runner's high. But you don't. It's something that you can do. Something as much as a 10-minute walk can help improve your mood. And it can help glucose metabolism. I've worked with patients that have PCOS, and that's one thing that can help. And this is not to say that if you start exercising, all of these things are going to improve, because everyone is different. And sometimes sedentary lifestyle isn't the culprit of these things, right? There's so many factors that are influencing chronic conditions. So sometimes it helps, but sometimes it doesn't help everything. And that's okay. It can also strengthen your heart. Different cardiovascular activities can strengthen your heart. It can also serve as a social activity, which is something I also took for granted, that I really started to notice with my cardiac rehab patients that are usually elderly and don't have a social circle. They don't really have as much of a social life. So joining any kind of physical activity that allows you to have that social interaction can also be really beneficial to your health. And it can also serve as a new hobby. There's lots of explanations as to how hobbies and doing something for yourself can be beneficial to your health overall and in the long run. So, choosing a physical activity that you enjoy is something that can help overall. And it doesn't have to be something super strenuous. It doesn't have to be high intensity. It can be moderate to low intensity. And really trying to get away from what society and the fitness industry has pushed exercise is meant for. Types of exercise and physical activity we have here. Types of exercise can be walking, cycling, swimming, hiking, or weightlifting. And all of these can help with some of your physical activities. It can help with playing outside with your kids so you have a little bit more stamina. It can help with shoveling snow. Shoveling snow is a really, really physically laborious job. A lot of our cardiac patients are advised not to shovel snow because it is so strenuous. So doing something like that regularly, if you have a job doing that, that is definitely considered physical activity. Anything that is a physically demanding job also ties into that. And doing exercise can sometimes help with that. Just being a little bit more mindful is a part of exercise, just kind of knowing, oh, maybe I should do something that is a little bit more intentional, but at the same time, listening to your body and listening to when you need rest. A lot of times people don't realize that rest is just as important as the days you take to train. And we have here a little cone of how you can add on, because it's not something that you have to do 30 minutes a day out the gate. It's something that you can do 10 minutes and then 15 minutes and then 25 minutes and then 30 minutes. And it can be based around your goals. If you want to do 3 days a week, if you want to do 2 days a week to start, if you want to do 10 minutes every day, it's really whatever you want to do. And there is a lot of different things that maybe we don't take into consideration just as consumers, but also as medical professionals. We don't always take into consideration. So that is one of the things that really helped me help my patients. Just one quick little slide of fact or myth, things that I've heard or even believed myself. And the first one, if anyone wants to say what they think, the first one, you can guess fact or myth. Frozen vegetables and fruits are nutritionally inferior to fresh produce.
I think it's a myth.
Yeah, it's a myth. And that is probably one of the most valuable things I also learned from my mentor, who's a registered dietitian. Frozen vegetables and fruits, in some cases, can be more nutritionally dense than fresh produce. A lot of fruits and vegetables that are frozen are picked and frozen at their peak ripeness, where they have all the nutrients. And fresh produce, depending on where you're getting it from, isn't always super fresh, right? If it's at your backyard, yeah, that's super fresh. You got it right when it was ripe. But if it's traveling several states and sitting on the shelf for a while before you get it, that means that you probably had to pick that fruit before it was ripe. So as time goes by, that's when that fruit is ripening off the off the branch or vein. It's just not attached to anything. It's not receiving any of that. So it's slowly ripening and it's not being picked that way. Someone asked, does the way you prepare vegetables, does the way you prepare affect vegetables nutritionally, like baking versus eating raw? They are going to have different compositions, but I'm not one to say one is better than the other. It really just depends on how you feel that day, because one day you might want baked vegetables and the next day you might want fresh vegetables, and they do have a different composition, but I wouldn't say one is healthier than the other, right? I want someone to eat their vegetables, whether it's baked or raw. It does affect the composition, but that's really all I've learned. The difference isn't significant enough to say someone should only be eating raw vegetables. A lot of times, raw vegetables will help a little bit more with the fiber, where it has that fiber integrity a little bit more. And maybe that can help in different cases with insoluble fiber. It can help with digestion. But in the long run, I wouldn't say that it's enough of a significant difference to choose one versus the other when you're trying to decide on a balanced diet.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, please.
Well, I read, I forgot where I read it. I think it was an article, but it was a Q&A with a anti-diet nutritionist, and she was talking about kind of what you were saying, like how if it's raw, there might be more fiber, but she was saying how when you cook vegetables, like sometimes, like to a very small degree, like some nutrients might become slightly less, but other nutrients will become more bioavailable. So it's like,
yes, I love that. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I might look that up because I have heard that as well. So yeah. Oh yeah, Alicia said good to know. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Anna. If anyone wants to share anything, like we have plenty of time, and I really like when people add. Cooked versus raw spinach. Taylor's letting us know cooked spinach is more bioavailable with iron and calcium. Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, and next one. If you're not sweating, you're not working out hard enough. And that is, does anyone want to take a guess whether that's a myth or a fact? Myth, yeah, total myth. There's so much that goes into sweating, and sweating really has more to do with thermodynamics than anything. It doesn't have much to do with the effectiveness of your workout. Actually, if someone is less conditioned, they are likely to sweat less. And the more used to exercise your body gets, the more quickly it starts sweating and the more it will sweat. But that doesn't mean that when you are less conditioned, your workouts aren't effective, right? And it doesn't mean that while you're sitting in a sauna and you're sweating, that you're getting any of the benefits you would when you're exercising. So that is definitely a myth and not something we should go by when we are trying to get the best estimate of the effectiveness of our workout. The next one, probably already know by my theme, you need protein powders and flat tummy tea to meet your fitness goals. Yep, that's a myth. When I was in college, flat tummy tea had really just come out and it was all the rage. I remember everyone on my dorm hall having flat tummy tea, not really realizing that it was more of a diuretic and laxative. We had communal bathrooms, not the best not the best trend. So why do people think sweating is healthy? There's a lot of Tiana, flat tummy tea had us in a chokehold. Yeah, so a lot of people think sweating equals weight loss, and they think weight loss equals healthy. So they think, oh, if I'm sweating and after I sweat, the scale is less, that means I'm doing good. It means I'm doing good. It means I'm losing weight. And there's also different practices that might have a different view on sweating, that it releases toxins. And there's different beliefs on it. Me personally, from what I've learned, I really just see sweating as something to maintain your homeostasis, something related to thermodynamics. If someone has a little bit more insight as to how sweating is healthy, I'd love to hear more about that and learn a little bit more. But from my understanding, it's just something our body does, and it's something our body is supposed to do. I'm not really aware of any specific benefits that intentional sweating has. So I think saunas might make people feel good. I like a sauna. I like being warm, but I don't always, I'm not well versed on what benefits exist from intentional sweating. But if someone is, I'd love to learn more. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so there's different cultural practices that do encourage sweating. There's one branch of yoga, I believe, that goes into it a little bit more. But like I said, I'm not super well versed on it. And the last, the last one was what was it? Detox diet will improve your health. Does anyone know if that's a myth or a fact? Yeah, it's a myth. That was another thing that was really going kind of big when I was in college, like detox diet along with the flat tummy tea. And most of the time, detox diets are related to laxatives and diuretics, and sometimes result in a lot of water weight loss. And same thing, people thinking they're losing weight, so they automatically assume that they are getting healthier. And it's really hard to explain that when you have a whole social media movement promoting detox diets. But one thing that is good to keep in mind is that we have organs that are already detoxing for us. And if they're not, a detox diet is not what they're going to recommend, right? So if our kidneys or our liver are not working optimally, I promise the doctor is not going to recommend a flat tummy tea. So that is one thing that really helped me kind of see past those trends, knowing that your body is doing a lot. And I think a lot of times we take it for granted. A lot of times we don't realize that's what our body was supposed to be doing. And I am just so shocked that these are things that I didn't really learn to question because they were so tied to, I guess, misinformation, and really tied to weight loss, which I think really affected a lot of people's understanding of nutrition and exercise and the purpose and value of it. But really, these are just little tidbits, little grains of information that have helped me throughout my understanding. I still have so much to learn, and I did include a couple of resources that have helped me. And some of the resources to start kind of in getting better information is the website eatright.org. I believe I spelled that all correct. I just want to double check. But yes, eatright.org has a lot of sound dietetics and nutrition information, and you can filter it through by food, health, fitness. You can also filter it by kids, seniors, men, women. It has a lot of things that kind of break it down for you. So I really do like that website. Intuitive Eating is a book that really goes into understanding the concept of intuitive eating. And it's a book by Evelyn Tribble and Elise Frisch. I can't pronounce their names very well, but it's a great book, and it comes in all different languages. So if you want to, I've recently picked out the version in Spanish. So there's different language versions on that book. Another book or another literature piece is The Body is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. And that is a great take on how you just manage the world and your body. And another good one is Nutrición a mi manera, which is a podcast by a anti-diet nutritionist in Mexico. The whole podcast is in Spanish, and I wanted to throw that in there for anyone who is also from a Mexican background or their family speaks Spanish, because there is still a lot of, I do notice a disproportion in information when it comes to anti-diet resources in English versus Spanish. And this is a great podcast that I was able to find, that I was able to share with my mom, that really addresses the different topics of fat phobia or gordophobia, right? So I really encourage anyone that does have Spanish-speaking friends or family to check it out. And that was my short presentation. I do want to talk more. So I do want to hear what everyone has to say, kind of what interested you in even joining this. I'm hoping no one was expecting like a lot of research, because we really have I really like that OMSA provides this community space for everyone to share thoughts. So I really like coming and sharing different thoughts on different topics. So I do want to hear from everyone else, kind of what you thought, how you feel, and what everyone, or just introduce yourself and what you're learning at VCU.
I can start.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Shannon. I came in late, but I'm majoring in psychology, and I really want to be, I'm looking at careers in eating disorder therapy, like being an eating disorder specialist or therapist. So I was just interested in this presentation because I think eating disorders are really prevalent in our country, especially on college campuses, specifically with like college women. So it was just nice to hear a supportive presentation on intuitive eating and gentle nutrition.
Oh, thank you, Shannon. That makes me feel good. I really wish you luck on everything. We definitely need that. So thank you for everything you're doing and all your studies. And thank you for sharing and being the first one to introduce yourself. or any other valuable information anyone wants to share? Anything that they've recently read on that they're like thinking maybe I'll be interested in reading more about?
Earlier in the presentation, we were talking about how like exercise and diet, like how a lot of that information that we have is like white supremacist, like is literally rooted in the idea that like white is right, everything else that is not is incorrect. And thinking about how like when you were talking about like what's healthy versus what's unhealthy, like my ancestors did not come up eating like baked chicken and rice and broccoli. Like they were eating usually like animal scraps, you know, lots of rice, beans, like things they had access to, like you were talking about accessibility, right?
Yeah.
And having to like season things because oftentimes they were given like spoiled and raw meat and like, you know, like vegetables that were expired and things like that. So like to them, like that was healthy, right? Or even like just culturally, certain cuisine, like my family's from Louisiana, so it's like a lot of gumbo, a lot of seafood, a lot of, you know, flavorful foods, but like that could be deemed unhealthy because there's maybe X amount of ingredients or these certain seasonings or fats or whatever that's used to be cooked with. But it's like what's healthy to you all may not be healthy to me and vice versa. But just because what I'm eating is different doesn't mean it's not right or it's not like healthy for me. And also like as a Black person, like my body requires different things. Like from a white person, like I need more vitamin D, right? Like I need certain things that my body doesn't produce that like white bodies may produce. And also even thinking about the science, like I have an HPEX degree too. And it was just like, nobody honestly was thinking about me and my Black body when they were making up these standards for like exercise testing and these plates and like all this other stuff. Like I was not considered. People who look like me were never considered. So like this information does not fit me. And even like to the point about like disordered eating, I think that we often overlook disordered eating in communities of color because it's just like, I feel like when people think about disordered eating, they assume like thinner white women and like, oh, gymnasts or like ballerinas or just like college age girls who were like on social media and things like that, who are like, I need to look a certain way. But like even disordered eating in communities of color, because growing up, it's like in school, in public school, I don't see food that I'm like typically eating at home, or like I just don't see a lot of representation. So like now I'm self-conscious. I'm like, oh, well, maybe what I'm doing again is like incorrect or is the wrong thing. And it's just like, no, that's not true. It's just different. But oftentimes women of color and femmes of color are overlooked in that conversation because it's like everybody just wants to be thin. But like, again, like that inherent like thinness equals whiteness. Like a lot of people don't understand that because in Africa or maybe in certain parts of Asia or like other lands, like thinness was not the standard. Like the thicker you were, like the healthier you were, because it's like, oh, you have access to food, like you can eat, you have these things, or like you need to eat a bunch of things to survive, like where you live, you get what I'm saying? So a lot of it, like you were saying, is just rooted in racism. Like that's it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And there is definitely like a tie on everything, right? And when you see someone that is, when you do see someone that is fat and they are eating 1,200 calories, a lot of people will applaud them, thinking that that is what needs to be done. That is their thinking that they are helping them by encouraging them doing that, not realizing that a 1,200 calorie diet is not something that is sustainable for an adult. So yeah, no, that's a really good point. And you mentioning all of that had me thinking of how many patients go through that and how many people distrust themselves when making decisions on what to put on their plate. So many times I had patients just say, well, just tell me what to eat and I'll do it. Or how many people seek out personal trainers that will make them a day-to-day, point-to-point diet plan, meal plan. To me, I started to realize that a lot of that was a result of people really distrusting themselves and really distrusting that they can make the right decisions for themselves. Yeah. Thank you for talking about that, Tiana. That's a really good point.
Even like the accessibility thing too. Like most food deserts and things are found in communities of color. So it's like, if that's what I have access to, if I just have access to like not the best produce, probably like chips, you know, cold drinks, stuff like that, and not fresh food, like even where I stay on the south side, like we have corner stores, but I have to, if I didn't have a car, it'd be much more difficult for me to get to the grocery store. And even then the grocery stores are hit or miss. I don't even shop on my side of town because the produce is trash. Like I'm either going to the West End or like going to farmers markets and things like that. But it's like, I'm fortunate enough to have a car. Lots of folks have to rely on public transportation. Also, we're in a pandemic. Like, it's just all layered. It's all jacked. Like,
It's yeah. I remember when we were at VCU. That was, I think, 2017 when I read about it. I don't know when it came out, but it was, you know, really no shocker that the majority of parts that are considered food deserts were on the east end of Richmond. I'm in Charlotte now, that's why I said Charlotte, but the east end of Richmond. And what I had read in that article was that there, at that time, I don't know if it still is, but at that time, I'm sure it is since it wasn't that long ago, there is a 14-year age difference in life expectancy based on whether you were born on the east end of Richmond versus the west end. So everything is really tied to your health. Everything is really tied to your access. Everything is tied to how you are treated in the medical system. Yeah.
I have to go out, so I'll really quickly just say hi to everyone and kind of introduce myself. And I referenced, there's this awesome podcast, it's called The Maintenance Phase. I put it in the chat, but they, the hosts do a really good job, like kind of talking through and processing a lot of the results of like diet culture and systemic racism and how all of it, and weight stigma, all of it comes together. And so I would recommend that podcast. But I know I have kind of like in the background emailed both of you, Tiana and Lucero, but I'm Taylor. I'm a dietitian and also a student here at VCU. And so I love all things intuitive eating and gentle nutrition and exercise. And so I think this is so great to share this and talk about this, and for anyone here to like continue to share it with people in your lives, like your you know, friends and family, because like you said, it is kind of revolutionary, and it's sad that it is, but based off of our culture and our education and clinical health systems, it does feel almost like hard to believe, but it's true. And the research supports it as well. And that's what I want to do with my own research. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that. And I don't know if this is appropriate, shameless plug. I have an Instagram account it's like this integration of nutrition and intuitive eating. So if you want to look me up, there's that too. But thank you again for this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Taylor. And I'll definitely take your recommendations.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I will drop the, thank you.
Yeah. I'm trying to get into the chat. How does this work? Okay. I'm used to using Teams. Okay. Oh, Katrina, thank you for joining. And Alicia, yes, Deshaun Harrison's Belly of the Beast. My sister actually went to their book reading or book signing. I can't remember, but I am going to borrow that book from my sister because I have heard that it's really good. Alina, thank you for sharing. Yeah, and BMI is still a huge conversation for us, right? Something that I never sat right with me is how BMI is not necessary for everything. It can be used sometimes, I guess, as a tool for large populations, but from my experience, I've never used BMI as an exercise physiologist. I've never used BMI to really help with treatment or education when it came to my patients. And I didn't need to. I had a lot of success working with patients, and I never had to use BMI. Sometimes I go to the doctor and I'm like, why do we need to I have a headache, you know. I don't think it's always, I'm like, this isn't going to change. What do I think about programs based on CBT like Noom? I have looked into Noom. One thing that I did notice about it is that it's pretty much like Weight Watchers, the new Weight Watchers, just geared towards more younger population. I think anything that is promoting weight loss can really counteract any efforts to practice intuitive eating. Sometimes logging your meals for maybe a 3-day period can be helpful in kind of seeing, are you getting enough calories in the day? Are you getting enough nutrients? But Noom is not something that I would professionally recommend. And a lot of times the coaches on the app are not well versed in a lot of things. And I think that's basically kind of the hard part for me, that anything that promotes, pretty sure Noom is not actually designed by professional therapists or psychologists. Yeah, I have the feeling as well. Anything that requires you to log your food day after day can cause some harmful habits depending on your history with disordered eating. So that is definitely something to take into consideration. It does use the concept of good versus bad foods, like Anna mentioned, which is something that I try to stay away from. And it's definitely very pretty and it has a lot of great design, but I do think that it is just another diet app like all the rest.
I have a book recommendation.
Yes.
It's called Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia by Sabrina Strings. And it's pretty dense and academic, but really interesting. It's not too long, and highly recommend that for folks. But yeah, I'm Anna. I'm a social work graduate student right now. So I have a history with disordered eating and eating disorders, and have like the past year and a half or so, I've been diving into, anti-diet, intuitive eating, all this stuff. So I was really excited when I saw this was being offered, just because it really isn't mainstream. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like this is an actual talk that's happening. So thank you for doing this and being here and supporting this movement.
Thank you for all the work you're doing, and thank you for your recommendation. I definitely noted it down, and I'm going to take a look at it. Maybe this will lead to opportunities of having other talks with maybe some registered dietitians that are versed in intuitive eating. I think it would be really cool to have things going on. Just because I remember when I was an HPEC student, I went to this one talk, and it was, I forget her name, I wish I remembered, but she gave a talk and she talked about destroying her weight scale, her scale. She talked about smashing it, and she talked about throwing it away. And as an exercise science student, I was completely appalled. I was like, no, she's wrong. How? That's not, why are we even allowing this to go on? And when I look back on it, I am so shocked by how I personally reacted to the information that was being provided. And it makes me think like, all my professors were great, right? Don't get me wrong. All my professors were great. I learned a lot, but just the field itself, like what is being promoted in the field for me to feel this way, right? I feel like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance a lot of times when it comes to understanding what is best for the bodies. And you see that cognitive dissonance even with medical professionals. The field that has one of the highest rates of disordered eating is actually the profession of registered dietitians. So it's really interesting. I remember working, I had a little short time where I was working in cancer rehab for patients that were either going through cancer treatments or were in remission. And every nurse on that floor was on the keto diet. And I was so confused because I was like, wow, these are like professionals. And I asked them one day, I was like, is this a diet you would recommend to your patients? Because they asked me what I thought about the keto diet. And I asked them, you know, is that something you would recommend to your patients? And they'd be like, oh, no, never, never. And I'm like, that's so interesting that you would never recommend that to your patients, yet you think it is something beneficial for you. It was really interesting. And I'm sure there's a lot more research on why medical professionals, we do stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely, Alina said, I would love to have speakers on intuitive eating. Me too, I would show up to the presentations as well. Alicia, should weight loss ever be the goal? I don't think so. Me personally, as a professional, I never recommend weight loss as a goal. A lot of times, what helped me is kind of more the concept of body neutrality and really just being okay with my body and checking my own internalized fat phobia changed my goals, where I did used to think weight loss was a never-ending goal, and it never stopped, right? And that's a lot of things that we notice, especially as women. We set that goal of weight loss. Once it's met, it keeps going. Very rarely does anyone stop at a certain weight when they have a goal for weight loss. It just kind of keeps going. From the patient population I work with, from what I have learned for myself, I would never say weight loss should ever be the goal.
That's something that I learned from you, actually, because like, you remember we were in school and like we used to stay at the gym because I like used to like intentionally under eat and then like over exercise because I was so scared like I was going to wake up one day and all the weight that I had lost was just going to be back on my body. Mm-hmm. And like my first 2 years of school, I was a brick house. Okay, she was a big girl. Like I was depressed. Like I didn't have the language for that yet. Like I was dealing with a lot. So I would just like eat and sleep and cry. Like that's all I did. And I got to VCU and I was like, oh, you know, I'm like exercise science major, whatever. All these like thin girls, like I should be thin too, whatever. And I was just like wrecking my body, trying to get down to a certain size. And like my body just was never meant to be that small. Yeah. Like I think I went from like a size 18 to like a size 8. Like my body was not meant to be that little. And I was eating it up because I had never been thinner before. So I'm like, okay, I look good, like get into it. You know, people are treating me differently because my body is smaller. Like, woo, that I'm still trying to like recover from that. Like just how kinder, like more, and even like I just felt more visible. But like once I got out of I have to be this weight because I like understood like I'm a growing person. I have hormones. There's going to be times when I'm super stressed out and I may lose weight or I may gain weight or whatever, or if my cycle is coming or whatever. like the types of foods I'm eating. Like there are so many other factors that impact how much my body weighs, how much water I'm drinking, like my bone density, all of those things. Like she really helped me put all of those things into account. And I was like, oh, I mean, as long as I feel good and, you know, like I feel good for me and like I feel good in my clothes and in my skin, like it doesn't really matter what I weigh, because I've weighed 200 pounds even, and I've weighed 230 pounds even, and wore the same size clothes, because it's just like how my body was shaped and like how it was composed. And it's just like, okay, that doesn't really matter. Like as long as I feel good, like that's what's important. And it was very hard, like very, very difficult. And then like the added layer of being like a woman of color, just like, again, always being seen as like masculine or unattractive or whatever. But I was just like, I actually don't have to subscribe to that. I just don't.
Yeah.
And like just understanding like I am in fact Beyonce, no matter what anybody else has to say. As long as I think I'm Beyonce, that's all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely also had feelings like that, especially in college, like being in that college setting. Oh man, like they say college is the best years of your life, but that was hard. Like I really feel y'all that are in undergrad, like that was hard. And like you said, there was this new pressure being in the exercise science department. Everyone was little, everyone was a CrossFitter. It was a lot. And I remember also going through those pressures, also getting down to a size that I was not happy at the end. I was like I've always had pretty thick legs, and then all of a sudden I didn't, and I was sad. I was like, wait, what happened? Where is wait, what's going on? And even at that size where I lost the shape that I recognized as myself and was under eating, was over exercising, had gotten to a really small size. And I went to the doctor that year, and the doctor still said lose weight because my BMI was not, and you know, it was just that I remember that moment being like, this doctor does not know what he's talking about right now, not about this. Yeah, Alicia. Yeah, it definitely was hard. It was, I don't even know. I will say though, if you ever want to work in the field of exercise science or anything when it comes to health promotion, you don't have to get an exercise science degree. If you want to get into it, you can get into it. Full disclosure, I do still have my exercise science certification. I still work on the side with one of the nonprofits, but a bachelor's in exercise science, they don't tell you how hard it is to find a job that pays a living wage with that. So you definitely do not need an exercise science degree to get into the field if later on you want to. I hate though that how everyone is perceived and how everything is pushed and promoted can sometimes deter people from studying what they enjoy. So I really do feel you on that, because I also went through that. I remember asking my roommate if she thought it would be okay that I select that major, because I didn't look like someone who would be in that major. And I remember thinking that. So I definitely feel you on that. I definitely think that feeling deters a lot of people from going into the fields of nutrition and exercise, which sucks, because I've heard some of my friends that are registered dietitians say that their patients don't take them seriously because of their size, which sucks, right? Or their peers don't take them seriously, which can be a whole other mess. So I feel you on that, and I hate that that's the reality that a lot of times we're faced with.
It was definitely like important for us to find community.
Alina said, "You're Beyonce, Tiana."
Yeah, so we feel like it was definitely important for us to find community, because I remember like our classes as HPEX majors, our like even our little study group was 3 women of color. Yeah, it was 3 women of color. And then everybody else, it was just white folks. And even like in our bigger lectures, even in our labs, it was usually 3 to maybe 5 of us, like maybe 2 Black folks, an Asian person, Latinx person, like Southeast Asian person, like, but it was never like, and we welcome you to this space. It was just like, we walked in, it was like, all right, well, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the year we were there, they said that like HPEX was the biggest major at VCU that year or something. And I remember being like, really? I didn't know anyone else in there that spoke Spanish. No one else. I was like, what? Yeah, unlearning is hard. I definitely feel you on that. I've definitely experienced some of that too. Alicia mentioned like having concerns about not being taken as seriously as thinner people. I have definitely felt that before with patients and peers. What helped me was focusing on my patients, not really worrying about my peers. As hard as it was and as messy as sometimes situations got, the best part was when it finally clicked for my patients that I was there for them and what I was providing for them is something that was helpful to them, because these diets they were going on, these different treatments that other professionals had recommended to them, is something that failed them time and time again. And really trying to explain that to them, that this diet failed you, you did not fail the diet. That is something that I think helps everyone to understand. When they're not able to stick to a program or a treatment plan, it doesn't always mean, usually I would say all the time, it means that that plan failed you, not that you failed that plan. So what helped me was focusing on my patients, but really, I think also trying to find a work environment that also feels the same way as you do can be really beneficial, which is not always the easiest in this field. But when you do find that little group of people that feel the same way you do, definitely try to get in on what they're doing.
Can I ask you a question going off of that?
Yeah.
So I love hearing you talk about like focusing on and helping your patients. I'm currently in a situation as a social work student. My internship is very weight and diet centered. And I was wondering if you had ever had a similar experience where like your values clashed with that of a supervisor or organizations, and if you had advice for that.
Yeah, definitely. So I use this a lot. I remember in cardiac rehab, I had a supervisor that was shaming all of the patients for smoking cigarettes. And should you be smoking while you have a cardiovascular disease? No. But shaming is not going to stop anyone. And one thing that I always like to bring into whatever workplace I'm in, one thing that I did in that instance was we all kind of different times did competencies. And I volunteered. I was like, hey, I'd love to do a competency on motivational interviewing and how beneficial that is to patients. And there's so many videos on YouTube on motivational interviewing, and they always use smoking as an example, but it can definitely be tied to different things such as weight loss, when things are very centered around weight loss. So motivational interviewing basically is explaining you are not to tell that patient what to do, and more so lead them to different answers for themselves. So I also try to explain in the case of weight loss that weight loss is not a behavior. If we want patients to have sustainable, helpful behaviors, then we have to promote those behaviors. And weight loss is not a behavior so it's not something I can promote. So trying to work through motivational interviewing with patients. So I did the competency for my peers on motivational interviewing, and how you ask patients like how they feel about their smoking habits. And if they say, I love them, then I guess you're done with that, because they're not ready for change. But if they say, oh, I would really love to stop smoking, then you can say, oh, okay, how can I support you? And having them choose like, well, I'd like to maybe start by smoking half a pack instead of a full pack a day. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's a start. And encouraging them as they're choosing the best options for themselves in their situation. Now, when it comes to a situation like you're saying with weight loss, I would not even touch on weight loss with the patient. I would focus on the behaviors because that is one thing, you try to find the common ground with your peers, as hard as it is. It's like, okay, we all want what's best for the patient. And something that is best for the patient is to focus on the behaviors that they can control. So a lot of times I encourage patients to add things, because a lot of times it's easier to add than it is to take away. So kind of going through different habits. So what are nutritional habits that are beneficial, and kind of asking patients like, do you have any nutritional goals? And I would not even touch on calories. I would get very specific. And use SMART goals, very specific goals. And I can send you some information that I have with like worksheets that I gave patients. So then they can say, I'd like to add a vegetable at breakfast. I would like to drink more water throughout the day. I would like to eat 2 pieces of fruit. So having it be very specific, because when patients are like, I'm like, what are our nutrition goals? I'd like to lose weight. That's not a nutrition goal. You're not eating that. Tell me. And then I focus on nutrition and exercise. And then exercise, I would say, what is a exercise or physical activity goal that you have? And then they can't say weight loss. That's not physical activity. That's not exercise. You can't do weight loss. So I want you to tell me what you can do related to exercise. And they're like, well, maybe I can walk 10 minutes. Maybe I can do some balance exercises. Maybe I can start some resistance bands or yoga. Maybe I can do this 10 minutes a day. Very specific. That way it's something that they can stick to. I also try to include a mindfulness goal. So I think the best way to steer away from weight loss is to focus on behaviors, because at the end of the day, that is something that's going to stick with the patient. And also kind of providing research. And if you need any help with that, I can definitely send you over some things. It's hard. It's really hard to work with peers that view things totally different. And when you know that you have concepts that are going to help the patient so much more. So it is hard, but thank you for all the work you're doing in that internship. I'm sorry you have to deal with some of that. I hope
a lot of my peers are like in the same boat. It's like the higher up people that are like, we refuse to discuss any alternatives, or like I was like, hey, I have this research that I love to discuss, and I was like, shut down.
Oh yeah, that hurts.
Good times.
Yeah, I would definitely yeah,
thank you for your response.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you'd like, shoot me an email. We can set up a time to talk, and I'd love to learn more about your internship and kind of what it's doing. Yeah, I do have some like goal worksheets that you can even present as something you want as part of your responsibility for the internship, or as part of work toward the internship. I don't know.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to talk about anything or anything on their mind?
Okay. Well, thank y'all for coming out. We really appreciate it. I just dropped a link in the chat that goes to OMSA's Linktree. So if you enjoyed this event for Latinx Heritage Month, we have a ton coming up. So today is October 5th. Latinx Heritage Month ends on October 15th. So we still have one more week and some change of programs left. Interested, and you'll also see our LGBTQIA plus History Month programs up there as well. So again, thank you, Sweet Angel, for being with us today. Thank you for the knowledge and resources shared. I'll send a follow-up email to everybody who came to the session today. I can attach the slides, her contact information, and like all the resources that everybody in the chat. I'll compile those and get those sent out. And then I'll also get this recording sent over to Kaltura so we can get it captioned, and then we can get that sent out to y'all as well. So give me like a few days to work on that. But if anybody didn't have anything else to add, thank you for being here. I appreciate y'all.
And please, please, please email me if you want to catch up and talk. I might reach back to you like a day or two late, but I will reach back out to you. And right now I'm working from home, so I really miss that social interaction. Please email me and we'll set up a time to just talk. I'd love to learn more about y'all. And if you have any questions for me, or if you want to research things together, definitely. Or if eventually y'all want to start a book club on this topic, let me know. I can't run it though. I'm not good at that. But if someone else wants to run it, I'll definitely join.
Bye, y'all. Have a good one.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.